So good evening, everyone. We are indeed fortunate to have on our eminent lecture series today, Professor Amod Gupta, who is Professor Emeritus of Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh. He's also been the former dean
एक मिनट. Sir, you can share your slides. I think there is some internet problem from my side.
I've already, can I introduce, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Again, please, internet
Okay.
problem. Yes.
Okay. So we are really fortunate to have Professor Amod Gupta with us, who is Professor Emeritus of Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh. He has been involved in active research for very long years, and he set up the Advanced Eye Center in PGI. He's been the head of Department of Ophthalmology for many years and set up centers for biotechnology in Advanced Eye Center. He's a Padma Shri awardee and a very active researcher. And today he's going to talk about publishing.
Well, thank you, Dr. Meenu Singh, for asking me to present this lecture for the telemedicine department. Well, you rightly said, I spent over 45 years publishing papers, writing papers in academic journals. And the only advice in the initial years I got was, no matter what, you keep writing. You write for any journal that comes to your mind or become available. Now, looking back, I wonder if somebody had guided me back then, when I was just initiating my academic career at the PGI, how things might have been different or better for me and for the department and the institute. From the outside world, at least from the point of view of common man on the street and non-academic people, the world of academia looks very glamorous. You are a faculty member, you are a professor in an institute like PGI or AIMS. We do not realize that the world of academia is highly competitive. You may be, an excellent physician or a surgeon. When it comes to recruitment, when it comes to your enrollment in the faculty or your promotion, the papers become the proverbial Damocles sword. And when you are denied a promotion or a placement in the faculty, it can be highly demotivating for a person. Now, let me tell you a story of this, because we use this term Damocles sword so often. But this Damocles was a courtier in the Dionysius, a famous ruler from Syracuse. He used to be a great flatterer. He would like to flatter the king all the time to draw benefits from the king. So much so that Dionysius was so sick of this man, he said, well, I'm going to teach him a lesson. And when you look around in your own faculty and look around your own residence, you would find a number of Damocles in your environment. The king was so annoyed. So what he did was he invited Damocles to a very lavish banquet in his palace. But when Damocles looked up, he saw a sword hanging by a mere hair of a horse tail. Now this guy lost all appetite, and forgot all about, because all the time this sword was hanging on his head. So this is the Damocles sword which hangs on the head all the time on people in the academic world. Do the residents face this sword of Damocles? Yes, thesis is a statutory requirement, but writing a paper is not a requirement, at least in the MD/MS courses. However, if you are looking for a faculty position, the first question invariably asked is, what was the subject of your thesis? And did you publish your thesis? And like Damocles, all your aspirations, all your ambitions to be a faculty member in the PGI get put paid right there and then. The moment you have to face that question, did you publish your work? Now, you may be nicely settled in faculty position. If your objective of writing or publishing is to gain recognition because you see some of your senior colleagues getting a lot of awards, a lot of recognitions, including the Padma Awards, and perhaps then you are on the wrong track. Awards will follow in a natural course in the wake of your publications. If you've done some significant or substantial work in a field, these will follow, over a period of decades. They will not come in a hurry. Now, if you recall, this year's Nobel Award went to David Julius 24 years after he discovered receptors of pain. So your papers have to showcase your ability to describe what you are able to see and observe, what others can't, interpret, and use it to change the way the patients are diagnosed, investigated, or managed. In other words, your papers must bring about a change in the behavior of others. It's, of course, easier said than done. Do they change the guidelines or policies to diagnose or manage a disease? Now, I'll tell you a story. And this is a story was told long time back. If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make sound? Now, this question was asked in Scientific American almost 130 years ago. And the answer was given that when a tree falls, it creates a vibration which is appreciated by the ear as a sound. Now, if you are writing papers, but nobody knows that you've written a paper, nobody has read it, nobody has seen it, nobody has cited it, it simply doesn't exist. You might as well throw that paper into a trash bin for all that it matters. We're very happy, very excited when a paper gets accepted for publication or comes in print or, becomes available online these days. But how do you know your paper has met the goal? What was the objective of writing the paper? Has it met it? And what do you do after you manage to publish a paper? In other words, do you track your papers? Now, very often, we use the word metrics. Metrics is about measurement. The science is all about measurements. Now, first question is, did your paper reach the intended audience of the readership? Has anybody seen or read your paper, or at least its abstract? Did it have a universal appeal, or it was lost only in your local area, city, or region? Did people interact? Did they comment? Did somebody write an editorial on that paper? And what was the impact of that paper? Did it change the policies regarding that particular disease? Now, in the past, the metrics were very simple. And the metrics was, they'll tell you what was the subject of your paper, where did you publish your paper, which journal, what type of paper you published, was it an original paper, was it a letter to the editor, was it an editorial, was it a review? How many papers you published, the number, simple statistics. And were you consistent, or did you start writing just before your promotion came due? Were you consistent in your publishing? And most vital questions, what they noticed, did people across the world take your paper seriously enough to cite them? Now, this was the metrics in the past. And I'll give you an example of that. For the sake of convenience, I have not offending some of my colleagues in medicine, I have chosen my own example here. So very simple statistics is available that shows that, well, I published more than 80% papers in subject of medicine. And what are the journals where I published? So this will immediately, if you're making a presentation to a selection committee, and if you present data, like this is how I published my papers, and these were the impact factors of the journals where I have published my papers. And what you published, articles, conference paper, book chapters, and all those are available now, very simple statistics. And the consistency, were you consistent over the years during the course of your career? Most of the time, this would be when you're appearing for the job of a professor or a senior position, that you will need to show that you were consistent in publishing your papers. Now, this one is also available. How often were you cited by others? Did your work over the period of years became more relevant? Did you continue to get more citation, increasingly more as your career progressed? Or people stopped citing your subject, what you were writing about was a dead horse. Nobody was bothered about that subject. Who were the co-authors who have written papers? Because these days, solo papers, single author papers are exceptional. They're very rare. So who were the co-authors with you? Were they consistent with you? Or you change your co-authors every now and then? So these are the statistics available as of now. So with the citations, each year, how many citations did you get? The most important parameter which people talk about and they will ask is, what's your H index? That means how many papers got cited as many times in the academic journals. And this is very interesting. This curve is very interesting because each point will tell you that this is how many citations your paper number one got. And as you go along the curve, at each point, it'll tell you how many citations each paper or document you got. Of course, we have a table also. Again, a very nice way of telling if you are sitting for the job of a professor or the job of a director of an institute, that you can show your impact, that your research did have an impact in the world of medicine. Now, how about the individual matrix? And I want to introduce using an example of one of my own papers, which we used in 2004. And this is how the world started changing around here, that we started looking at some of these widgets which are inserted into the journal here site. And this is called PlumX matrix. Now, when you click on the Plum-X matrix, it will tell you the story of your paper. Now, what does it tell? The most important, we are worried most of the time. It really tells you how big impact it has made if you look at the citations of your papers. Now, when you look at those, you can have Web of Science, or this is here we're taking Plum-X matrix uses Scopus or the Elsevier site for this. Now, whether they are cited in Scopus or PubMed Central, these are the two indexes which use citations, and you can get a cross references also from these. Now, very important, this is policy citation. Did this paper get policies making somewhere was involved? So it got into a policy document. Now, this another interesting information it gives, the captures 59. Now, captures is very, very important. That means somebody has kept this reference with him and he wants to cite, in future. So it can be a leading indicator that your paper is likely to be cited if you find the captures. Or Mendeley, same way, it's a reference kind of manager. And if somebody has kept your paper or your citation in a reference manager like a Mendeley, he again intends to use it. That means it has captured the imagination, and you can predict that, well, this paper is going to be cited by a number of people. And of course, I told you about the policy. Of course, this is some bibliographic definition here. Now, this is how it looks like Scopus. And you can see, I think one should every time look at your paper and see who's citing your paper and what kind of work is it getting cited? Who are those authors who are citing your work and in what context? So all this information is available on Scopus or in PubMed Central. The interesting part is that PubMed Central has full-length article available. And if somebody is citing your paper and that full article, full-length PDF is available, it adds to the merit of that. So it's important to be cited in a PubMed Central journal. Now, this is what the policy citations are. Where did it make a difference? Like this particular paper was in the PubMed Central, the guidelines it got cited, as well as somewhere in Chile. I wouldn't have imagined that somebody sitting in Chile would make a policy decision based on my paper, but that's what it is. So the ultimate aim, when I said, is it making a policy decision? So you should be looking at that as well, because that's a very, very critical impact of your paper. And same is the Mendeley reference manager. That means somebody is keeping it in his Mendeley reference manager for future citation, and he's writing something around this subject. Now, if you are accessing directly the PDF of the articles, this information is lost. So you need to be, when you go to the table of contents of a journal or of your own paper or somebody else's journal, you need to look at this full text HTML where this information would be available. Like for this particular paper, we again get the Plum-X matrix. We also know that this can be shared. So you can share this citation on article, on email, Twitter, on social media. So this is where you can tweet this by using this link here to the article. But if you're looking at the PDF directly, this will not be available to you. Now coming to this, if you click this Plum-X matrix again, then you will see that it will show immediately here that there are the citations and these are the captures. So as I said earlier, that this is what is very, very important, because you know that it is generating interest among, even if the citation are less, it's generating enough interest among your readership. Now, still, we are falling short. We don't know how many people are actually accessing your article in real time. Has anybody seen or read it? Well, they have captured it. They have kept it on their desktop. in a reference manager for future use. But how many have seen? How much interest did it generate? And did it have a universal appeal, or was there a particular area, geography, where it was noticed? Did people comment on your paper? And of course, we have talked about the impact. Now, this is a very interesting paper, which is Association of Lifestyle and Genetic. These are just random papers I picked up for examples. And genetic risk with incidence of dementia. As you grow old, we are all worried. Is it because of my lifestyle that I'm going to have dementia, or is it there a genetic risk for developing dementia? Now, when I look at this now, I access this as it became available new online. And this is, I would recommend that all academic people should subscribe to table of contents from the major journals, at least, particularly the multi-specialty journals. You have a lot of information. Now you can see, I saw this, access this article within a couple of days of its becoming available online. And now you can see, very interestingly, it gives you the views. How many people have seen it, clicked on it, or seen the abstract, or seen the full paper. Now you have an audience of a large number of people. Of course, it didn't have, because citations will come as the paper matures over a period of time. They will accumulate. You will not get citation unless you are able to. It's so interesting and impressive subject that you are able to draw an editorial or two. But by and large, citations take time to appear. But this is what is the most important Altmetric attention score, 965. This is alternative metrics. That is, alternative metrics is alternative to the conventional metrics that I've shown you the examples before. How many papers, how many citations, stuff like that, which is more of academic interest. But it doesn't tell us how much attention your paper is drawn immediately after it got published. Now, I'll show you another example. And this is now not in a multidisciplinary journal, but a subset. This is a subspecialty journal of JAMA ophthalmology. And we have a paper, again, a very important subject of open angle glaucoma, whether statin use or high cholesterols are associated. Can statins prevent the occurrence of open angle glaucoma in those patients who have high serum cholesterol levels? And it had an audience limited, given that it is a ophthalmology subspecialty compared to a multidisciplinary journal like JAMA, but it gained a lot of attention, the alternative metrics, and I'll come to shortly what is that alternative metrics. And this is the again, you will see this altmetric buried here, the link to this altmetric donut, the color donut, as we call it. And 175 is a score over the course of this talk. I'll tell you how you calculate the score. This is 175. That means it's a very, very high scoring article. And there is a number of these sources. Now, what are the sources of this? Now, these are the sources from the, like red is for the news media. If you recall, and I'm sure Dr. Meenu Singh and Dr. Rajinder Singh would recall our days where the institutes were shy of going to public, going to news media, talking about our research activity, research publication, not realizing that it is a public, the tax-paying public, which funds most of the research, which gets published in journals. And it used to lie buried in journals and books, deep in libraries all over the world. Nobody knows what you published unless or until somebody got interested 20, 30, 40 years later and wanted to pick up that article and would look around, hunt around for that article to appear. No way, the world has changed now. And this is what I say, the changing paradigm. Because common man, because it affects whatever you do the research, whatever you publish, ultimately the beneficiary is, the major stakeholder is the common man who's going to be impacted by your research, and he must know about it, among all other academic people. So we have a number of these media, like news outlets, the tweets, the Facebook, the social media, they mentioned in news feeds in a variety of news media. And of course, now this is very important, that what is the geographic? Now, this was a paper relating to the open angle glaucoma and statins and the use of statins in high cholesterol levels. It got major attention here in the United States of America, a little bit here in Saudi Arabia, and somewhere in Venezuela, Colombia, and this is Saudi Arabia here, and Japan. None, and not anywhere else. So there were no active people. Now, when you look at who were the people, now you know that there were at least 83% of the people, but the common people who accessed this information through various variety of outlets like media outlets or tweets or Facebook pages. So they are the major stakeholders to know about it. Now, another subject, I'm taking an example, again published in an ophthalmology journal. It's a major ophthalmology journal, subspecialty. Now it's talking about children. Should they be exposed to outdoor light? And would it prevent the progression of myopia or the occurrence of myopia? It's a major concern. If there are outdoor activities, because people or children are confined to homes, especially these days, but this paper came before the COVID era. And when we click on the Altmetrics widget, we find that it draw within a few days, 14 citations, a lot of captures here, and social media. But it was tweets, it was getting tweeted around. People were tweeting and retweeting this article, to make it or to spread the word around that outdoor activity is very critical if you want to prevent the occurrence of myopia or prevent the progression of myopia. Now, this is where the message has to go. The researchers have to exploit the social media. They don't have to feel shy of going to the press, to the news media, or tweets or Facebook or wherever they could, spread the word. And very quickly, it came into the policy documents. Now, if it comes in the policy document, that means the policy makers, the governments are now become a stakeholder in promoting that children should spend time in the outdoor light activity. Coming more recently to this news, there was a major concern. Would antibody testing, doing serology for COVID antibodies, allow people to move freely? And there would be less restrictions. If they were positive, they will resist the infection by coronavirus. But it turned out that a lot of people were interested to read this, to see this article. So much high Altmetrics. There was a lot of attention to this. Or this article, where people were concerned, common people on the TV media, people were talking about the role of dexamethasone. And people are trying low dose or versus a high dose of dexamethasone. Are they going to be equally effective or they're going to be less effective? And you can see how many people have accessed the same day. More than 50,000 people were looking at this paper. And it gained so much attention in the media. And of course, they concluded it makes no difference. So no need to give 12 milligram. Now, coming to, again, a multidisciplinary paper, and you are writing about the role of physiotherapy, whether it will cut down on the long-term opioid use, which is a major concern all over the world. It did get some attention, but nobody got interested in reading it by the time I was looking at this particular paper. Or this paper, very limited appeal of course, in JAMA, but in a subspecialty journal. There were no views, no citation, of course, because within a matter of few days, I saw this paper, and it's very recent. You can see it's available on 28th October, and there's very little attention I mean, people are not worried because this is limited to a very, very specialized field. Or this patient who got a infection or a inflammation. Again, very little interest among the common people. It doesn't generate mass appeal, doesn't generate any buzz around the paper. Now, as I said earlier, the paper that came in 2018, there was a lot of buzz around that paper. And one came only early this year, January 21, that children who were confined to the home during COVID, they had a progression of myopia. And look at the number of people. This beats all. 74,000 people immediately accessed this article because every parent in the world was worried about this kind of activity. The children were staying at home. Would it increase the myopia? Yes, it would increase the myopia. It got cited. This was a gene that even in the academic, people started writing about this subject, and it had, unlike any other, Altmetrics 1723, so much attention in the social media it got, and people reacted by way of comments. And you can see here the colored donut, how various media outlets propagated this, talked about this paper, and it had a spread fairly all over the Americas, north, south, some parts of Africa, India, Australia, New Zealand, Japan. You know, probably the information not available from China, so that's why it's not shown, but it shows you that majority of this was by the public, but so were the scientists and physicians interested in this. So you know, what is this spread? Who are the people who are reacting, who are seeing or reading your paper? So this is all about that buzz about work that you do. Another one was, very limited appeal, that what are the ocular eye side effects of the COVID vaccine? Because that's again a major concern, which is leading to COVID hesitancy. Well, it had lot of views, some interest in media. Probably the media was not trying to spread this, but you should develop because it's a fatal disease, a cerebral venous thrombosis. There were no views till that time when I saw, but a lot of media attention. There were a lot of hype created in the news outlets about that people are going to die of cerebral venous thrombosis, not realizing that's a very, very rare side effect of. And of course, this did say in this paper that there was, compared to the pre-COVID era, there was 5-time increase in the incidence of cerebral venous thrombosis in women. But what drew the attention was this research letter, not even an original article, where they raised doubt that the COVID vaccine was causing acute myocarditis, of course, not fatal, but required some treatment and hospitalization, not ICU care. Look at the number of people who access this. Immediately they're worried. Young people getting vaccine, are they going to get acute myocarditis? They wanted to see what the paper says, what the science was. So this had a lot of attention, a lot of comments immediately after. And look at this now. It's a universal, it's a major concern. And I believe this was a paper which led to vaccine hesitancy all over the world. So this is how your papers or research impacts the whole world practically in real time nowadays. And this is what it shows, how it was accessed by physicians, members of public and all. Now, these are the various, social media which have their interfaces, which are the applications and the programming interfaces, so that automatically these are drawn. So I'll come to that later. And the score is a weighted count in Altmetric. Like news is a widespread media, so it gets 8, blogs get 5, policy documents get 3, and like that down the list, to YouTube and the number of mandate readers and all that. So it's a cumulative figure which comes from the attention, Altmetrics attention score. And these are all color coded for the donut which I've shown you. How do I attract attention? So you need to go out to the blogs, or somebody who blogs, to give you a link to your paper or your research. And link in your email signatures, because that is where it will capture. So when you are writing emails to your friends, You put down in your email signatures, you put down a link, DOI. I'm sure you know DOI, most of you at least way. And share links, wherever. Okay. And make it available. That is where you're writing on Facebook, you're sharing, you're liking it, you're tweeting about it, and this is high time institutes like PGI. I'm not sure what aims, but PGI doesn't have its Twitter handle. It doesn't have perhaps its Facebook. It doesn't have any social media account. Publishing more than 1,000 papers in a year, I think it makes a lot of sense to have these social media and go out. At least you will have 1 or 2 papers every day to tweet. And I see a lot of at least very prominent eye centers of the US tweeting every day about their participation in meetings, their residents presenting papers, their papers that get published, the awards their faculty got, the lectures they have delivered. So all that is tweeted and retweeted to create a buzz around the work. You see, justice not only has to be done, it has to be seen to be done. It has to be perceived by common man to be done. So is your research. Not only is to be done honestly, but it needs to be seen. It needs to be perceived by the major stakeholders, that is a common man. That is the changing paradigm. Always link to a page that includes your unique ID like DOI, and it has to be in the main body. From that's where it will draw, that link would be picked up by these interfaces with the social media. Few last words. One has to be aware, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. And this is a paper, an example. Reasonably high Altmetrics score, a lot of views, and it says old women who get cataract surgery die early. You can imagine the kind of panic it created all over the world, and it had a Altmetrics score of 712, and the donut show multicolored. So all kind of variety of media spread this around the world, and you can see again the universal appeal. Old people don't get cataract surgery done. That was the message given by this paper. And this paper got retracted because of false data, false interpretation of data. Now, unfortunately, what happens is when this gets withdrawn, the attention it gets is very little. People don't talk much about attention to something which was wrong. Very few people looked at it. And it gives a notice that it has been retracted. This is drawn today. I saw that still has a lot of media buzz. There were views, but finally, it got seen, but not much. It didn't have the same buzz when somebody came out and said, well, this was wrong. We are sorry. This was wrong interpretation of data. Old women after cataract surgery don't die early. So my friends, to summarize what I have just shown you, how the world is changing, how it is reacting to your research and your publication papers, unless your papers get seen practically in real time, within days of its publication, they get traction, they get mentioned, they get abstracted, they get indexed. There's no point wasting your time and effort. It'll be just a mere statistic. Nobody in the world is bothered about your statistics. They'll be sure to do you some good when it comes to promotion. But when it comes to an institute, when it comes to India, when it comes to Indian science or medical sciences in particular, nobody is bothered about, because your papers did not create buzz. Because you did not create that buzz around work. Okay. You must track your papers to know. It helps me. When I track my papers, I know which papers. I can counsel people. I know precisely, almost 25 to 30% of the papers never got cited. And why should we be wasting time? If you can, early in your course of your career, if you can spot what are those papers which are not getting traction, which nobody is interested in the world to look at, why should you be spending time and energy writing those papers? But what are those areas which are getting policy, getting into policy documents, or which are creating a buzz around where world is paying attention to what you're saying? I think I have given you some cues how you can use the digital platform now available to enhance visibility of your work. But you have to be at the same time aware you're never going to succeed. You are leaving digital footprints. They're not going to leave you. They're not going to leave you. So beware of faking your papers, fabricating your data, or false research just because you are chasing name and fame. They will, of course, come to all of you, in due course if you have done a remarkable work. Thank you very much, Dr. Meenu and the telemedicine unit of PGI for this opportunity to share my thoughts on this subject.
Thank you very much, sir, for such a brilliant talk on this very important topic. And I think you've really shaken the minds of a lot of researchers who would be thinking that, okay, we are publishing, but where are these publications taking us? And in the last 2 years, during the COVID time, and a lot of people have been talking about research waste, that so many papers were published. In fact, every day, many papers were being published on COVID, like starting from systematic reviews, rapid reviews. Now trials are coming up, which they're saying are very small number, small sample size, poor quality trials, which are trying to get into practice actually, and also into policy at times. And a very important example is that of ivermectin, which was initially recommended to be of a great use. And later on, when systematically the research was evaluated, it was found that it was not effective in those kind of situations when properly the outcomes were addressed. So you're absolutely right, sir, that we also have to be smart enough to take our papers to their right place and to their right conclusion. As you have shown that these days it is easy with availability of IT to have visibility to your research. And Twitter is actually becoming, there was a paper which was published on Twitter that how important, there's a systematic review on that, that how Twitter has helped people to further their research and bring their research to light. So you're absolutely right that we should follow the right path, and we should not always get enamored by, that we should be getting visibility, but what we show should also be of very high quality. Yeah. So there were some questions in the chat box, sir. One was, which one is better, like Google Scholar or Scopus as a citation? I think that is something which is...
I think I've been looking at that, and Google Scholar is not a very valid tool compared to Scopus. Scientific, because you will find a lot of duplications. You will find even the conference papers, your book chapters and stuff, wherever anything is published, probably even if I go down to the level of newspaper, it'll show up as a Google Scholar citation. So the most standard people world over now believe is the Scopus, because it is a huge database of something close to 22,000 journals, which it indexes, and God knows more than 22 million papers in its database, which it indexes, compared to Web of Science, which is been the previous by Clarivate Analytics. There, I think the number of journals they search is just limited, 11,000. And the number of papers in their kitty is 1/10, I believe, just a couple of million papers they look at. But sure enough, these are the two major citation indexes. But Google Scholar, no serious scientist would be looking at Google Scholar, So, of course, Google search is improving these days compared to, PubMed. But, one can always try that if you get a reference, if you're looking for one. through Google search, but I'm not sure about Google Scholar as much.
Yes, sir. Dr. Ketan wanted to know whether every paper or publication can get an altmetric index.
It can get what in impact?
Altmetric index.
Oh, yes. Most of the papers that published get altmetric 0. They are getting a big 0 because we are not publishing on social media. We are not providing a link because we have to provide the link. Some of these journals, major journals like Elsevier journals or, like JAMA, its own published house, they embed these widgets like Plum Metrics as well as analytic, into the headline, into the brief abstract where they are giving, they provide that altmetric underscore underlined, and you click on that and it'll give you that altmetric donut, but unless you have a presence, unless if there is 1 or 2 or score 5, it will certainly come. So that's what I've shown you. But like earlier papers which I've shown, because these have kind of immediacy impact. Like social media, the papers which I had shown you 2003, 4, my own papers, they didn't have any social media presence. They will not become relevant social media 15, 20 years after they were published because there was no such available. The Plum-X metrics is available. It gives you the more citations, the captures, which are more relevant to scientists than the common people. But for old papers, it will not show the social media presence on tweets, or they didn't exist, the Facebook and the newspaper, there were no automation in linking through these interfaces with the social media and with these, companies like Plum-X, and the other talking alternative, metrics, altmetric. So these are the big time companies which are doing this job only, providing you these impacts.
Sir, Madhuri Devaraju wanted to know, Madhuri, can you unmute yourself and ask your question? Because this is more like a comment. And the comment was that sometimes the researchers are just publishing their findings and, like they're simply reporting their findings, but actually it creates a major controversy, for example, with the vaccine hesitancy paper.
Yes.
So, like, whose fault is this? Is it something like, is it your fault, or is it just that idea which is there at that time?
I think it's a conflict zone. As a scientist, as a medical scientist, it is our bounden duty, if we are watching, observing something, some phenomena, be it say cerebral venous thrombosis or myocarditis, or people are getting, say, ocular changes, or they're getting in the lungs. So as a scientist, we need to be reporting these, but we have to be very, very careful that we build our case based on scientific observations, complete with very, very standardized controls, and then put forward. So half-baked, like most of the research in field was half-baked. Most of the papers, the number of papers which got withdrawn during the COVID era, probably is a record-breaking number of papers withdrawn because of immature people, everybody rushing, everybody had nothing else to do, but rushing to the publishers, and editors were too happy to publish. I mean, they were in that kind of a mood to publish whatever. So I think it remains that whether we should prematurely, but same time we need to make sure that no wrong message goes, which leads to a situation like vaccine hesitancy. I think it's a very, very serious side effect, as I brought out, of using these media. But nowadays, if you publish in a paper, it will automatically get, whether you like it or not, it will get extracted by these widgets.
Dr. Manvi wants to know, sir, when it comes to utilizing research, what is your opinion on using platforms like SkyHub, which have a controversial legal status? I mean, these are some of the services which were available, and we could make people available some of the research articles which otherwise they were not allowed to access because the journals didn't have open access policy. So people just started collecting these articles and they were made available. And there were some Russian people, I think, who were involved in this. And then there was a big legal controversy in India about this. There's a question by Dr. Vivek Singh. Is it good to write? We need to update our CV in terms of views, articles, access numbers, and online attention. That means Altmetrics score in our publication list with impact factor.
In your CV, you must give that. And for your presentation, when you're sitting for an interview, you must present that. These days, everybody is talking about their work. Who else is going to talk about your work?
Yeah. I think, sir, you really made some excellent suggestions to our researchers who have joined today. And I think we also need to look, this is something which we should know right in the beginning of our careers, that this is the track we have to follow, rather than just going on doing research and again getting nowhere. So I think the title which you chose for your talk was something which will become, something to use very commonly. Dr. Amit, are there any questions on the YouTube?
No, ma'am. There is no questions on YouTube.
Dr. Pankaj or Dr. Amit?
Yes, sir.
Sir, it seems there are no questions. Yeah. Okay. Dr. Siddharth, would you have to say anything? You recently got a recognition in US College of Rheumatology for your paper.
It was a pleasure listening to
Dr. Siddharth, you are sitting quiet. Would you like to say something? It was a pleasure
listening to Sir's talk, ma'am. I was not
He's
aware
one of
of
the young researchers.
I was not aware of a lot of things that Sir mentioned, so it was very insightful for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, sir, for addressing the researchers today.
Thank you.
We would love to have you again on our sessions because we know that something like this would be really useful.
Yeah, thank you.
For our students and residents. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Minu. Thank you for the opportunity. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.